Doodlebud, we're checking out a big pen with a special nib. It is this one right here. This is the Magna Carta Mag 600. It has a flex nib on it. And the big question you always have with a modern flex pen is, how's the nib? Is it just like a vintage one? I gotta tell you, it's pretty good. I really like this one, so let's just jump right into it. I happened to stop by the Pen Chalet website one day. I saw some sales, and I always go to the further sale category. There is a section where pens are returned, and so those are offered at an even steeper discount. And this Mag 600 14K Flex was on there. It was the only pen that was on there, and it was a really good discount. And so I said, okay, let's do this. I've been thinking about this pen. We got an ebonite body, number 6 size, gold flex nib, ebonite feed. As you can tell, it just gets ink on everything. That you want a nice wet feed. And I just had to know, how does this feel? Is it nice and bouncy? And it's nice and bouncy. I did prepare myself because I thought, if this pen is so fantastic and the flex is glorious, why would you return it? And the answer to that would maybe be if there was some issues with the nib, but the nib was off a little bit. So I got the pen, it wrote, but I noticed the nib did feel a little bit off. And under magnification, it seemed there was a tiny defect during the slitting here in the tipping. It wasn't, I don't think it was something the previous user did. There was just some little anomalies sort of on the inside of the slit here in the tying gap. At the very inside, it was almost deformed and at an angle, and it would just catch a little bit. It wasn't super pleasant. So I did a little bit of work to the nib with my micro mesh pads. I had to go nice and slow. I tried recording it. It just wouldn't work. I couldn't do the work I needed to do to fix it and record at the same time. So the pen works now. You didn't get the footage, but it now is writing very well. The tying gap is repaired. The tipping material is shaped properly, and I quite enjoy the pen. So let's just write with it, and then I'll talk about some other stuff because you want to see this thing right. I'll point it out right now real quick, as I might forget, but the pen is a cartridge converter style. So there you go. You could probably eyedropper it. There is no O-ring placement here, but a little silicone grease and a little bit of caution. I imagine you could safely eyedropper this pen, so it's quite good. The cap comes off, I think it is 1 1/4 turns. Let's check it really quick. 1 3/4 turns. And the thread, I think it's a triple start thread. 1, 2, 3. How does it feel to write with this Mag 600? It's really nice. I enjoy it. It's soft, it's springy, the snapback is good. Lots of line variation, as you saw. When I first got it, as I mentioned, I think it was just off a little bit, and most likely why it got returned. If it wrote for the person who ever bought the pen like it does now, they probably would not have returned it. So yeah, I think just a slight defect on this nib, and I managed to get a good scoop on it as well. I've been enjoying it. I'm going to just show you this pen here as a quick comparison. This is my Pilot 912 FA, has an aftermarket feed and a modified nib specifically to get a super thin hairline. So I'll show you the difference there. But let's just show you a few other parts and features of the pen, give you some comments, and then we'll do a quick comparison with this one just to show you, and then we'll wrap things up. Size comparison. It's a big pen. This is a Visconti Homo sapiens Bronze Age. That's the large size. That's the Maxi. An Omas 360. That's the large one as well, the Magnum. Then we have the Mag 600, a Jinhao 9019, and the Wing Sung, oh, I forget the number again, but I think it's the 630. Caps off, again, still quite a large pen, hangs in there with some of my larger pens. The cap does not post, so this is as big as it's getting. The weight of the pen is very nice and comfortable. just over 30 grams overall, and for such a big pen, that is relatively light. 12.4 there in the cap, and the body with converter and some ink, 18 grams. Like so, just about 150 millimeters, and the pen itself is about 136.4. A thick cap at 16.4. Main part of the body is about 14.8 and reduces to 12.8 on the threads, and the section, it has a slight taper, 11.8 down to about 10.8, not too much. And it's a very long section up to the threads. We got 22 millimeters including the threads. We got a little bit more, about 28. And even if you grip quite high, which isn't uncommon when you're doing flex writing, sometimes you're doing flourishes, so holding further back gives you more space to do that stuff. You might end up holding it right on the step down, but it's not uncomfortable or anything really bad like that. For comments on the overall construction and build quality of the pen, I would say it's good. I would say it's decent. I wouldn't say it's amazing or phenomenal. The ebonite's quite nice. It probably could use just a slightly better polish, but it's still pretty decent. I do notice on the trim pieces, so the ring here and the clip, they are 24 karat gold plated through PVD plating. However, they just feel a little bit rougher. If I feel the bands on other pens, the clip, they're perfectly smooth. A lot more depth in the plating. Little features like this, they'll have a little roundness to a little radius on those. These ones are just very, very basic trim pieces, but even if you rub your finger on them, I can feel it. There's a little more grit to it, like a very, very fine sandpaper, like a, I don't know, 8,000 grit or something, but you can feel it. And even, I'll put it onto the microphone, you can even hear it a little bit. Again, these do not impact the performance of the pen. These are just things I notice because that's how I am. The threads are good. A little bit of tool chatter down on the threads. Yeah, you can see a little bit of it right there. So the threads are good, but just not ultra nice and smooth, but that's okay. The cap does seal wonderfully. I've had zero issues with nib dry out. You can feel it snug up, especially because of the ebonite, so it seals quite nice. A lot of the time, especially this time of year with temperature swings, I take out the pen, there'll be condensation on the nib, so it's keeping it nice and wet. But yeah, build quality, everything, it's decent. Like I said, not quite perfect, but let's get back to writing with it a little bit more, and I'll break out this one here for comparison. So comparing the writing samples between the two, the maximum line variation is nearly identical. They're both very good. Lots of softness and springiness to it. The hairline on this one is much smaller. It was ground that way. I had it done by Josh Lax. He actually even did a video of him doing the grind. Check my channel. I'll have a link in the description if you want to watch that process. So the hairline is going to be thinner. As a result, when it's super fine like that, it's not as pleasant to write with. It's much more sharp and scratchier. The Magna Carta is quite smooth. It's quite enjoyable. You could use it just as a daily writer if you wanted to and not have to do all the maximum flex. I'll show you just some kind of more basic writing samples here in a moment, and some fun things you can do with these flex nibs just for creative fonts and texts and writings as well. But this is a more enjoyable writer versus this one. Again, it was ground to a super, super fine point. So there is a leg up on this one here, but I've been very pleased with this Mag 600 and the 14K flex nib. It's nice and soft and a lovely writing experience. The only place I would say this falls short is occasionally it does miss a little bit, and what it seems that happens is the ink just retreats up the slit just a touch, kind of just to where the end of the feed is. I'll just look into it. I'll put a white background here like paper and I'll have a close look at it, and I'll just see the ink has just kind of sucked back up there. So I'll have to check that tying gap, just see if I have to do some modification. It seemed that, I don't know if that's true for all the pens, but it did seem this one had maybe just something happened during the slating process that messed things up a little bit and the geometry's out, causing that. I'm not sure if that's frequent or if it's just a one-off because of this particular nib. But here's an example. Let's write the word vampire, and since we have a flex nib, you can do some fun stuff. So if you do a quick downstroke, you get a little bit of a point at the end of your characters. Oh, there we go. See, it missed. Okay, so vampire, obviously they got fangs. So you could draw your M with fangs like that. There, it's missing a little bit, but give it some spiky kind of letters. So if you're designing something, you can have some fun with that as well. Let's do the same thing on the 912. This is where, again, this had to be an aftermarket feed for it to be able to do this. But I have zero hard start or flow issues with my 912. It has an aftermarket feed on there, 3-slit ebonite feed. This thing just has tons of ink. Let's do some more regular writing. I'll do the planets again. That was just really quick writing, not trying to be mindful of maximum flex or style or even tidiness at all, just really blasting through it. You can still use it as a regular writer, and a little bit of down pressure can make your characters look a little bit fun. And then if maybe you want to slow it down and do some cool printing, you can play around with that and just add little tails, little accents, just to make your writing stand out. You don't have to go full flex modes and calligraphy and really super slow it down. Although I find on those kind of faster quick strokes, we do get some skips here every now and then. It could be a one-off of this particular nib, or possibly the feed could use a little bit of tweaking just to have a little bit more ink flow on demand. Closing thoughts on this Magna Carta Mag 600 with the 14K flex nib. I think it's pretty good. The pen is comfortable. It's pretty well made. Like I said, a few little nitpicks, nothing that really detracts from the functionality of the pen. The functionality is absolutely perfect. The nib is quite nice. It feels great in the hand. The sensation, the softness, the bounciness, the response, the snapback, all of that. Mine, it seemed, had some type of manufacturing little hiccup during the slating process. That's my guess anyways, or else someone kind of abused it a little bit or did something to it and returned it. But either way, the only kind of functionality issue I've had with the pen is some hard starting, as you saw, and I can see it. The ink just retracts up the nib a few millimeters, so it's just not right at the tip when you go. So I will see what I can do, and I'll make a post if I'm able to fix that, just so other people can fix that on other pens as well. But the performance is there. Maybe that's a one-off, the hard starting with my pen. Check other reviews to see if that's a common thing or I'm the lucky recipient of that anomaly or not. But overall, I like the pen. I do have some other ideas with this as well, but that'll have to wait for another time. That's it for now. I think that was a pretty good find in the discount bin there. Oh, not to mention, I used my own Doodlebud code at the Pen Chalet website to save an additional 10%. So that kind of was the final nail in the coffin. If you haven't used that, I'll have, again, information below. Always check my video descriptions. There will be discount codes for different retailers and stuff like that. Save you a few bucks. Love to chat with you down there. Thumbs up. Subscribe if you like clicking on buttons. And if you do, we'll catch you next time.